Hi, I'm Helen and I'm from ACS Financial. I'm one of the senior insurance consultants here, specialising in the church insurance and protection space. One of the things that we see a little too often in church life is the underinsurance or under-declaration of church buildings and contents. And when that impacts a claim, that can have significant financial flow-on effects for the churches. We want to help you navigate that and hopefully avoid that in the life of your church. Into the problem. Imagine that your building is damaged, only to find when it comes to make a claim that you're only going to be paid half of the cost of repairs. It's not because you haven't got the property insured, per se, but it's because you haven't declared an appropriate replacement value. That's what's called underinsurance. So underinsurance means that a property is declared for a value substantially less to what it would actually cost to rebuild at today's prices. When that happens, something called the average clause can be applied. What that means is that an insurer can reduce the payment of your claim proportional to the degree of underinsurance on the property. So we'll try and break this down into a really simple example to help explain how the average clause or the underinsurance would work. Imagine that you are hosting a function at church and you've got 200 people coming. You're catering for that, but you only told the caterer that 100 people are coming. There's going to be a massive shortfall on sandwiches and people are going to go hungry. That's probably not going to go well and it's going to be a little bit embarrassing. In the same way, if you've got a building that's worth $2 million and you've only declared its value at $1 million, in the event of a claim, there's going to be a shortfall of $1 million, and that is not a great position to be in. What we tend to see in church life is decisions being made around the cost of the insurance or the protection for your organisation. Decisions are being made based on budgets, which we understand, and often there's a misnomer that if we insure our property for $1 million less, then naturally the premium is going to be cheaper. Unfortunately, that doesn't actually serve you well in the event of a claim where you're going to be left with a much larger shortfall than the small amount of premium you may have saved at your renewal when it comes to actually fixing the damage that the church has sustained. And that can be really problematic, particularly when you can't finish the repairs or you're having to reach out to your congregation and ask for extra financial help to get that project to completion. So to that end, it's actually really important that you do your best to get your values as close as possible to their actual replacement value. Now you might say, well, how do I do that? And what if I get it wrong? The good news is that insurers aren't really punitive when it comes to the values, and there is a degree of tolerance that is allowed in that space. So if it doesn't have to be dollar perfect. Most places will give you an allowance of around the 15%. So if it's in the ballpark there, then the average clause is unlikely to be applied. But there's steps that you can do to get it as close to the mark as possible. If you don't know where to start, you can call us. We're here to help you, and we've got processes and resources that we can provide you with to get you on the way. But for other churches, you may have someone in your church who is a commercial builder, who's well versed in the rebuilding costs of a property like yours. You may have someone that you know that is a qualified valuer. They are an excellent resource to go to. Yes, professional valuations do cost money, but again, it can be an excellent benefit and money well spent when getting the values right. Other important things to remember is what should be included in your valuation. It's not just the actual building itself, but you do need to remember to factor in a number of other areas of your property. Your landscaping costs, professional fees, architect fees, permit fees. How much is it going to cost you to clear the site? All of these things need to be taken into consideration when you are declaring a replacement value for your property. So hopefully this has been helpful in helping you to understand what underinsurance is and the average clause and how that might relate to your church. But we really want to drive home how important it is for you to get across this right now and ensure that your buildings are appropriately declared, because we know that building costs have escalated dramatically in the last few years, and it's really important that you get this right for your organisation. I'm going to pass over to Rosie now, who's going to share a few examples.
Hi everyone. Thanks for listening to our little discourse on underinsurance. I'm just here to give you a couple of real life examples of how this plays out in the life of churches. There's the first example, which is a fire destroys the whole church. So that's what we would call a total loss. So imagine your church is insured for $2 million, but it's actually worth $4 million. So not only do you incur the cost of having to clear the site and rebuild and all of those sorts of things, but you're $2 million short of what that may look like. We've had churches where they haven't even been able to start rebuilding in 2 years. We've had other churches that have rebuilt their complex, but they weren't able to access the auditorium space because they didn't have enough money in the claim to fit that out. Now that's not ideal. But a second one that's a little bit more interesting or different, and people don't consider this scenario, because often we have people or churches that come to us and they say, we would never rebuild this. It's surplus to our needs. It's bigger than we need. It would only cost us $1 million, while you're telling me that the replacement cost, or not us telling you, but we're being told that the replacement cost is $2 million. However, there's a unique scenario that occurs here, and this is, can you imagine a storm comes through and your roof is damaged? The damage to the roof is $200,000, but you're 50% underinsured. So all you're going to be able to claim is $100,000, which means, well, you've got half a roof. That's very awkward. You might have to go to your congregation and ask them for funds so that can be fixed, so you can continue to do the things that you're called to do. And so sometimes we understand that in terms of insurance and protection that, you need to save money, you need to look at the costs and all that sort of stuff. We understand that this is a really challenging space to navigate, but we here at ACS Financial are committed to helping you along this journey. So please contact us, because we want to be able to help you do what you're called to do in changing lives and changing your community.